Hi everybody and welcome back to 2BeLikeChrist. Today we film our video from the dungeon. Welcome back. In today's study we're going to we're going to continue our study in the Gospel of Matthew. Sorry about the conditions. I actually filmed this video originally in a really cool spot and came to find out that the files had been corrupted on the memory card, whatever. So I wanted to get a video out today, so I'm actually filming this on my phone, so the audio's not as good, the quality's not quite as good, but we'll get through it. Today, Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them, Jesus says. For truly, I say to you, until heaven and earth shall pass away, not an iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter into the kingdom of heaven. One of the great adversaries of Jesus in the Gospels are the scribes and the Pharisees. And when Jesus comes on the scene, the scribes and the Pharisees want to know what this man is about, because it seems that he's trying to bring something new, and they say, well, what are you doing, Jesus? Do you think you're greater than Moses, who gave us the old law, and you're going to tear down our system and give us a new system? The Pharisees didn't want the old law to go anywhere because that was their source of authority, and they believed in their self-righteousness that they kept the law better than anybody, and therefore they were right before God. And so they asked Jesus, are you come to destroy this law? And Jesus says, no, I'm not come to destroy the old law. I'm actually here to fulfill that law. The old law served its purpose, but ultimately it needed fulfilled. And the Jews, and especially the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes who said that they knew the law so well, should have been looking for the fulfillment of those old promises. Jesus could have said to them, I've given you 1,500 years to keep this old law. The only problem is no one is going to stand before God righteous and holy because they could keep the old law perfectly, because every single one of you has sinned. And it's only under the new law that Jesus was bringing that anyone can actually have their sins forgiven. And so the picture that we have here is the Pharisees, and they are on this ship of self-righteous law keeping, but the only problem is that their ship is sinking. You're never going to make it to God if you're riding on the ship of self-righteousness. But in their case, they want to stay on this ship, and they're captaining this ship and proclaiming how skilled they are as a captain even while their ship is sinking. Jesus is pulling up in his new ship beside this one, and he's saying there's holes in your ship. There's irreparable damage to your ship, but I am offering you something better. And he's imploring people to come on and to join him in this new law. But the Pharisees and some other Jews were just saying, no, we're staying on our ship because we like it better. And so down towards the end of these verses in verse 20, Jesus says to the people there, he says, I know that you look up to the scribes and Pharisees maybe as excellent keepers of the law, but unless your righteousness exceeds their righteousness, you're never going to make it into the kingdom of heaven. And that may have been a shocking statement for a lot of the people. They thought, wow, I can't keep the law any better than those men. I'm not educated like those men are educated. I'm not a scholar. How am I supposed to do a better job? And Jesus will give us the answer, and Paul will give us the answer very clearly over in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 30. And because of him, you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God. Notice this, righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. And that's the problem with the Pharisees, is they're on their sinking ship and they're boasting about how great of a captain they are. Their ship has holes in it, and all they're doing is shoveling water out of it every single year. Shovel a little bit more water out of it, but it's never going to make it. Jesus is saying, get off the self-righteousness boat and don't lean on your own righteousness. You have to lean on my righteousness. Paul says Jesus was made righteousness for us. You are never going to be a sinless person who is able to stand before God and say, I'm not guilty of anything. We see the purity and the holiness of God, and we see the nastiness and the dirtiness of sin. And every one of us has this sin. And the only thing that can reconcile those two parties is Jesus in his righteousness and his sacrifice to bring us back together. So I want to encourage you as we take this out of a first century context and put it into our lives, not to be a Pharisee who is going down with the ship. And you may say, well, I don't practice the old law. But there are many people who have that same attitude. The attitude is, I don't need to be a Christian. I don't need Jesus. I don't need people to be accountable to. I don't have to be part of a Christian community to be a good person. People will say, I'm already a pretty good person. I help sick people. I give to some charities. And certainly, when I stand before God on the day of judgment, he's not going to look at me and condemn me because I wasn't wicked. And the boat that you are on when you make a statement like that is the self-righteous Pharisee boat. I'm doing good enough to get myself to heaven. I think we can say that sometimes because we don't really see how dirty sin is. And so we don't really feel like it's all that bad. And yet it's enough to separate us from a totally pure God. And again, Jesus is saying, you have to have me to bridge the gap. So my encouragement is, do not stay on the self-righteousness boat. And if you are a Christian, don't fall into the mindset that, I am going to be justified before God because I do so much good work for him. I think that's easy to do, and it's a trick of the devil brought on by pride. Lean on the righteousness of Christ because it is the only thing that's going to be able to allow you to stand before God. That is the greater righteousness of Matthew chapter 5, verse 20.